Oh, really have to hit that this afternoon. Everybody's so lovely and quiet. I want to welcome us all to the City of Powell River's Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024 at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes, additions, deletions? Seeing none, motion to adopt.
Move to adopt the meeting agenda.
Second, Councillor Palm. Sorry, Councillor Almeida. Nope, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. So I'll just mention that the mayor, our CAO, Bhopal Singh, and Councillor Isaacson are all away with leave, and we hope we are thinking of their well-being right now in our season of colds, etc., that are coming on. On to adoption of the minutes. Committee of the Whole meeting held October 8th. Motion to adopt. Councillor Almeida, second Councillor Doubt. Any comments about this, the minutes that are on our agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. On to delegations. Susan Young from Cathet Pickleball Association regarding a request for support. Ms. Young.
Good afternoon. As you said, my name is Susan Young, and I'm here
Microphone.
presenting.
Oh, Ms. Young, just before you go on, please speak more closely to the microphone. They're very distance sensitive. And I'll just mention to you that delegations, we give 10 minutes,
Yes.
but then when questions are asked, you may get lots more time than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? I'm good enough?
That's better.
Great.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Young, and I am the president of the Cathet Pickleball Association. And I want to thank the council and the mayor for providing us space today to talk to you about a very important community issue that's come up. Today, the QPA is going to be talking all about pickleball. We're going to be answering the question, what is pickleball? Why are we here today? What request we have? Who is the QPA? And why are we asking for this now? Before I get into that, the QPA did a very quick survey just before this, and it's hot off the press. We have a video, but I also wanted to share with you one survey respondents, what they wrote about pickleball before we go to the video. The survey went out to 121 of our members, and we had 104 responses. And the question was, I support QPA's mission to advocate for the development of safe and suitable facilities where we can have year-round access to pickleball in the city of Powell River. We had 104 responses. 103 of them said yes, one said no. But in particular, I wanted to read to you this response that one of them gave. And it was, or it is, pickleball got me through some very tough years while looking after my terminally ill mother. I'd never played before after wanting to try it for quite some time. It only took a few weeks before my fumbling nerves and inexperience transformed into fun-filled confidence. That's the beauty of the game. Folks of any skill, age, and ability are able to play and get more than just fitness out of it. It boosts mental health and provides a sense of belonging. I've recently just moved to Powell River and have found connection and community through the sport. To have a designated year-round facility would mean more residents would reap the positive outcomes from pickleball. Currently, the available court demand is too high to include family and youth time slots and struggles to keep up with the growing increase in new players. I would be interested in volunteering to support youth programming in the future. So that's just one comment of many of why it's important for us to look at having a facility here in Powell River. But before we get on to more talking, we do have a video that we'd like to share with you that answers the question, what is pickleball in Powell River? Okay. As they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. That video was developed and created by our two pickleball members, Sherry Sakamoto and her husband, Terry Mortonuk, and we just want to take time to thank them for volunteering their time for creating such an amazing video. So the next question up is, who is the QPA? We are a nonprofit organization, and we are dedicated to promoting the development of pickleball in Powell River, in our community. We are wanting to foster overall health and wellness of community through the playing of pickleball of all ages. We want easy access to pickleball. We want to encourage intergenerational play and social engagement to promote the health and well-being of our community. We are a young nonprofit organization. We're only 18 months old, but we've done a lot of work in the past 18 months, and we are ready and willing to do a lot more over the next however many years it takes. So that brings us to our next question, and that is, what are we asking for? We're asking for constructive collaboration with our community to create a concrete movement towards a dedicated pickleball facility. The QPA is asking for 3/4 of an acre to 1 acre of land lease agreement with the City of Powell River and the QPA. The section of land that we're seeking is adjacent to the upper parking lot of the Powell River Recreation Complex. And you'll see in your package that we gave you exactly where we're thinking of it. We're asking that a working committee be established between the QPA, the Powell River Planning Department, any other Powell River departments needed to make this come true. We're willing to apply for funding. We're willing to take on the building process. We just think we have the will, and we think that Powell River has the expertise to pave the way so we can have a pickleball facility for all. So just moving forward, why now? Why does there have to be something now? So first of all, there's been consistent growth in players, steadily climbed in the past 10 years. Powell River is no different than a worldwide phenomenon, and there's no slowing down. Huge lack of space. We did an audit this summer of 25 properties of Powell River's available land and properties. None of them worked. We've done an audit of the gyms. There's no space. They're at capacity. Even because there's other user groups are using the gym. Younger players are entering the sport. We've taught schools. We've had people interested wanting their children taught. We partnered with the Powell River Recreation Complex this past summer. Amazing, successful summer program that we did. One parent said that she tries to get her children playing other sports, but pickleball was the only one that they truly enjoyed. Tourism potential. People travel to play pickleball. There are cruise ships who have pickleball on them now. It's unbelievable in terms of a destination sport. We also think that having a pickleball facility would be an amazing community asset to be added to the jewel in the crown of all the other amazing community assets that the regional district and Powell River already have to support families and individuals to move here. Most importantly is the fact that the Powell River Racket Center will be closing soon. There's no hard date of it closing, but if it does, not just if, when it closes, there's going to be a lot more pickleball players looking for space. And at this point in time, we're aware that the Ocean View gym is already pretty much at capacity. So in closing, I'd like to say that the suggested location, that's my phone, near the recreation complex, builds on a community hub model, but that is simply a suggested location. We need to start this journey now to move forward together. I'm urging the mayor and the council to pass a motion today, if you can, to create a collaborative community committee, working committee that has a set timeline to it, so that we have a working plan. We can come back with a working plan to develop and build a facility for all on leased city-owned land. We are willing to work. We just need the city to help us pave the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. think we all have friends playing pickleball.
I'm amazed at this 3:30 in the afternoon, and there's this many people. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Now I have two colleagues I'd like to come up to help me answer any questions you might have. Are there questions? Maybe there isn't.
So this is the next thing we do. We turn it over to councillors to ask questions of you. And I think unless there's any objections from council, I think it would be fine if you have two colleagues who accompany you to answer them. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. So process-wise, we tend to listen to delegations without a lot of decisions during the delegation part of it. So one of my questions to you is the facility that you're hoping to build. It looks like you're hoping it will be multi-purpose that you can use in the day and other folks use at night. So what are all the other compatible uses for the same space?
One, hope is that a facility, I'm not loud enough. I can speak into the mic.
There's people in the computer that won't be able to hear you if you're not
good.
speaking into the
Yeah.
mic.
No, we're currently in a multi-use facility now. So we know what it takes and what it's all about, right? So, the more, being a nonprofit, of course, the more use we can get out of it, the cheaper that we can keep it for everybody that participates in that building, right? That's how we do it now in the building that we're in. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of life in that building, we've been told. So, the owners have got plans, and that's the urgency that we have. Because if you look at, I think right now we got 140 members. Those members are going to go somewhere, which is, we know where the somewhere is. It's Ocean View School. That's the only facility that we have currently that we can play pickleball at. Right? We don't offer it at the complex. We don't have any other gyms that are offering it. So, and believe me, we've used all of the above over the years. We started playing in the curling rink parking lot. Like we got lines painted on at the Christian school on lacrosse box. We're trying to make it work, but we're running out of opportunities. So we need to come up with a solution that'll push us forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody's going to try to convince you that pickleball is not a good idea, or it wouldn't be nice to have more facilities. I agree with you 100%. It's a popular sport. Being able to get in out of the rain, particularly on days like we've had this last week or two, is a really good thing. But you're coming and asking the city and the taxpayers to build a facility and to operate it and to maintain it. So my question is, do you have a business plan that takes into account the cost of servicing a piece of property, building the building, designing the building, operating the building, maintaining it, and the fee structures that would be required to pay that? And that's just a question. I know from dealing with all of the various facilities that we talk about at council that none of those things are cheap. And I'm just asking you if you have a business plan that lays out a successful way for a facility like that to cover its costs.
Thank you for the question, and we do have a business plan. It's like a chicken before the egg. We have one set up, and we have funding options. But I'll have my co-board member Peter Larlee answer that question. But we do have a business plan with some numbers identified as important.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for the time that you're giving us. One thing that's become quite apparent to me is that pickleball is profitable. People pay to play pickleball. People travel all over the world to play pickleball. Currently at the Racket Center, there's a membership that pays an annual membership fee, a significant number of people. And the income derived from membership fees, tournament fees, with the membership now at about 120 players is about $120,000 a year. And that pickleball at the Racket Center, that does not include all the people that are playing pickleball in Powell River, just a percentage, probably about maybe 70 to 80% of the pickleball players are at the Racket Center. We anticipate, if there was a center here, to see very rapid growth of about 20% a year for the first 3 years. And then after that, of course, you start to get a saturation point. It drops to about 10%, and then we figure 5%. But I don't think it's unreasonable when we look at our projections to see a substantial pickleball center here in Powell River that's generating an income well in excess of $300,000 a year. And we figure that's more than enough to pay operating expenses. And with those kinds of projections, we believe that it's a very financially viable proposition to build a purpose-built pickleball facility. We know that coming to council asking for a bucket of money is not a popular request. We're prepared to get behind such a project and contribute to funding and arrange for funding. We're not seeking funding at this time from the City of Powell River or the Regional District. We're seeking an allocation of a building site.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'd like to see that business plan before we go too far down the road of making a decision.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add that if a working committee is struck, that business plan would be brought towards the working committee. And we're also currently have a small fundraising committee that we've already started. One of our members has written to Rachel Blaney to ask Rachel Blaney to send a fund sort of research ask to the Library of Parliament, I believe it's called, to see if there's any other funding sources we can be sourcing. And I'm actually going to take a course in Nanaimo all about financial literacy in sports organizations. So we're on the road towards this for sure. We have a lot of energy to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quam.
Thank you, through the chair. First of all, I want to thank you, Ms. Young, for your presentation today. It's nice to see all those individuals, many of them in that facility that I used to play soccer with, and it reminds me how old I'm getting. Well, that was my first point, that I want to thank all the pickleballers for coming out today. Many of them are getting to senior age, and this is not, because I'm that age now, is not lost on me how important physical activity and socialization of our seniors are for their well-being and health. So we get that, I get that, and this, in my estimation, is a must for our community. And I will say this, I've been here for a long time, and I remember youth having them write a letter at Brooks Secondary for me to broach the idea of a skateboard bike park to the tune of $500,000. Our community forest came to help us out in that endeavor. Our community forest is still making money. They are still providing nonprofits with funding for various activities on the recreational front, and the vast majority of community forests throughout the province, much of their money goes towards recreation in all of the communities. We found that out years ago. So this is something dear and near to my heart. And I want to ask Mr. Gao a question because he's up on funding opportunities through his planning facility. Mr. Gao, have you seen anything that has come across your screen recently in terms of possible funding sources for recreation in this endeavor?
Through the chair to Councillor Palmer, I must admit I haven't been looking specifically for something of this nature, typically more green infrastructure and things like that, but you're correct, there are funding opportunities for all different types of community-based assets.
Thank you, Mr. Gow. So that opportunity, we'll keep an eye out. And also our community forest, which is here to present after you today and give money away to various nonprofits in our community. They like to see projects that are 50-50 shared funding because that allows their funds to go much further in terms of use in our community. So, you know, where there's a will, and the will is obviously here.
Yes, we have the will.
There's a way. So, what else did I write down here? Oh, in terms of your location. There were herons in that location at one time. We were trying to build a track, but their herons are gone. And close to our complex would be an ideal site. And I reached out to some of my sources at the complex earlier today after reading the proposal. My first question was, how long is the second sheet of ice in the rink shut down each year? Well, I was hoping 6 months, but it's only 3. So that's not a viable option. The other thing that came back is perhaps because we have to enhance our hockey change rooms, that perhaps that facility could fit behind that west wing of our complex instead of taking up an acre on the other side. And then it's tied to our facility and we'll have staff to man it and look after entrance and all the rest. So that's an economic driver. And the last point I want to make is your topic of sharing how valuable in terms of tourism dollars this is long overdue. Because the group that came to town this past weekend for hockey from Wyoming, 100 strong, put over $100,000 into small business coffers this weekend. $3,000 just for lunch at one of our local restaurants. So that is not lost on me, which I was trying to do long ago to spur this type of economic tourism. So this is one that I am 100% behind. There's long-term planning in terms of use at our complex. But we need to find something in the short term that's going to help you good people out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that. You're absolutely correct. I think we need interim, short-term planning as well as long-term planning. And again, the QPA is so willing to step in and be part of that planning. Absolutely. But thank you.
Just before I go to Councillor Almeida, I just want to mention, generally speaking, applause is not part of the procedure here. I really had to mention that, but it is appreciated, the spirit behind it, that's for sure. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of QPA, for coming out. For those that have paid attention for the 2 years I've been on council, I think I've said enough times and shared enough that recreation is deep in my heart. It's aside from doing it professionally, I've done as much as I could do in my 20-year professional career to be involved with recreation aside from actually profiting from it and making a career out of it. So, you know, anything to do with recreation, I'm always in favor of. As Councillor Palm pointed out, you know, it's going to be a long-term solution. I think you guys have done a great job being adaptable and flexible right now, and it looks like with upcoming pending changes to the Racket Center, some more flexibility and adaptability is going to be needed in the short term. I'm not opposed to a facility, but as you've I think probably can imagine, a facility is going to take some time, even forget the building process and the funding process. I would even say that conversation needs to be part of an OCP review process in terms of not just a facility, but our entire recreational plan. We have a complex that is nearing 50 years old, and as you shared, you're looking at a facility that's gonna be multi-purpose. So it's not just a single-use facility; it's multi-purpose, almost a mini complex in a way. So I'm open to that conversation. I just don't think we're gonna be there in the next 2 years. I'd say it's going to take some time, and I'm up for rolling sleeves and figure out where we can find a solution in the meantime with our existing facilities, which will be a challenge, of course. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see tons more. I am part of minor baseball and part of slow pitch, and both are growing and wanting better facilities, or in the case of slow pitch, an actual facility versus making do in a park. So I'm all in favor of that. It's going to take some time and conversation, but I look forward to being part of that process.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that. That was another reason why we actually moved to coming here today, because we understood that the OCP has been pushed, I think, another 2 years down the road. Am I correct in that? In that assumption? Is that correct? Has it, the official community plan process, has that been delayed?
The Director of Planning could probably answer that question a little more accurately than the rest of us up here.
Through the chair to the speaker, yes, that's correct. The OCP has been pushed back as it relates to community engagement. We will still be doing some of the background work related to the official community plan leading up to the 2026 election, but community engagement will kick off in full swing. But that means a finalized version of the official community plan is not set to be delivered until 2027, 2028.
So there is an issue of time. That's why we're here, because we don't necessarily have the time. And we do think that having that space adjacent to the recreation complex could actually be part of that plan moving forward before the community plan takes place. So that's our bent, and that's our focus here, because 2027, and then we have even longer, correct? So that's and I've already been talking to people over 2 years before this about the need for a facility. So in total, that would be approximately 7 years in total from the beginning of the conversation. That's a long time.
I think there's a moral to the answer that the director provided, and that is that perhaps going through your ask was, Ms. Young, was for a committee. Now, committees they're an animal of council, and it's quite possible that that kind of committee might not be the quickest or most efficient way of approaching what you're already doing. But in that regard, I've got 2 or 3 questions for you. One is, and we've already sort of headed in this direction a little bit. I'm aware, but just peripherally, that there's more than one pickleball organization in town. I'm also aware that at least that's the information that's what I've heard. I'm also aware that it was mentioned that a facility for pickleball could be utilized for other sports, basketball, indoor tennis, was it? Badminton? Right, other racket sports possibly. So my first question is, have you considered, and I wager you have, but I'm just wondering where your process is at, and this is leading in a direction, with working in partnership with other like interest groups, other sports. Have you considered expanding your support base to maximize potential for getting the facility that you seem to be aiming at here?
So 2 years ago, I was vice president of the Paul River Sports and Fitness Society that runs the Paul River Racket Center. I did try to move forward with tennis and other sports groups, but was stopped because I was told that there was not a good partnership between those two. And that's basically why we began the Cathette Pickleball Association. That's not to say that we are not available or interested with partnerships with other sports organizations. The issue is our focus. So our focus is pickleball, and in many respects, it's probably cheaper to build a dedicated pickleball facility than it would be to build something that would include perhaps indoor tennis. We would be doubling the cost probably if we did that. So If other sports organizations want to join in this process, we would be open to that, which is why I called for collaboration in the community. And I tried doing that earlier, but it didn't go anywhere. So that's why we started the Pickleball Association.
Chair, all the user groups are present. You talk about the different factions, Ocean View players, Townside players. There's representatives from all groups here today.
Awesome.
So we see we can build a common front.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're going with it. We're not here to leave anybody out. I did the costing on building a facility to host tennis as well as pickleball. We go from 16,400 square feet. We had to add 14,400 for 2 tennis courts. Not opposed to it, but if the tennis group in Paul River wants to get behind it and piggyback and come along, right? Do the fundraising that we plan on doing to get this place built and run. We know we can run it. We're running a facility right now. We've got loans from Community Forest that we're ready to pay back after a 5-year term, that we've got the money to pay them back. Right, we're paying our bill at the place that we're currently in. We know we can do it. A new facility, less cost, less hydro, all of the above. A newer building, no maintenance. It's going to be a metal building with windows that fits into the community plan. But we're ready to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's comforting. And I realize that I'm definitely not a proponent of hybrid designing necessarily. When you try to make one thing suit multiple different purposes, often you sacrifice. I mean, it's not as good of an idea as to specialize in one. Unless there's other comments, maybe just before I go to you, Councillor Palm, I'm just going to mention that I think your committee idea is a really good idea, and to make it as representational as possible, I appreciate that you do have a business plan in place. I'm pretty confident at least one council member here would be interested in, as an ex officio or a delegate from council, to be on your committee. And what that would achieve is to streamline, suggesting a starting point here, streamline relationship with the city, because obviously this is a relationship with city departments would be crucial. There's 2 departments represented at our staff table here that would be directly involved. I'm sure recreation and planning and finance as well, quite likely. But that's another huge question. Just looking at the size of the building that you are suggesting, it's in the millions of dollars. So fundraising is definitely a huge question here. Yeah. So I appreciate that we're at a really beginning point, or you are at a beginning point, and I'm really optimistic because clearly the benefits are manifold. Councillor Palm.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just want to emphasize the point that this is a community project. And having said that, the city has an abundance of land, thankfully. That could be the city contributing. You could get somebody to keep their eyes open for recreational funding out there in the province when it comes along, and to help you out, because that business plan and funding from your end is vitally important, and that's where we need to get to. And then we can reach out to our good partners at the Community Forest to help you out. That's kind of where I see where we're at in the short term, if we want to get something done quicker rather than later. So I just wanted to throw that in. Thanks, Chair.
The other comment of this is, in terms of fundraising, we need land. I know you're strapped for money as a city. We're not asking for money. What we're asking for is land, because honestly, the only way we can move forward with fundraising is if we have land. There's no way we can do any kind of fundraising, any kind of capital work, because whatever organization we go to will say, well, what do you have in terms of land and or buildings? So truly, the only way we're going to ever move forward with this, and believe me, I do not want it to be 7 years down the road, is the idea of having land. And that's one thing, as you said, Councillor Palm, Powell River is rich in. The Gazette Regional District is rich in. Thank you.
I don't think we can come to any determinations as far as that goes in this meeting. However, I would suggest that the discussion be taken to the next step, perhaps with you might want to approach one or more councillors on Councillor Dowd.
When you're done.
And then proceed from there, but that's just me. Councillor Dowd.
I've listened to everything you've said, right? And your urgency, and I can understand that because I see the signs up for sale that whole piece of property that the Racket Club is on is slated for sale or destruction or some other wonderful purpose that's going to improve the community. And I can understand the haste to get something done. If you want to talk about detailed discussions about the design of the building, detailed discussions about the club and the fundraising and who's going to contribute and whether basketball courts are available or not, that's the kind of thing that can take a long time. Again, my limited experience on municipal government is if you want something done in a hurry, you're talking about 3 or 4 years from now. But sometimes it's best just to keep it simple. And sometimes it might be a good idea just to write a letter to the city and say, we'd like you to designate this many hectares or acres of land for a pickleball court building in this area so that we can, if we can get the money together, we can go ahead and do it. It's a simpler ask. It's not as complicated, but it's the kind of question that you might get a yes to a lot quicker. Just trying to help.
Thank you. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today, because how do we move forward? So when I hear the councillors talk, you have great expertise that we do not have. So it's wonderful to hear that perhaps 1 or 2 councillors might sit with us to figure out a way to move forward more quickly than 7 years. Thank you.
Councillor Palm and Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, just to follow up on those comments, excellent comment, Councillor Dowd, for the sake of expediency, and that is, if you would endeavor after this meeting in the next couple of weeks to write that letter requesting a parcel of land, then council can formally ask staff for a report on feasibility in terms of your ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So, and my suggestion also, we do have a select committee on city-owned lands that you might ask for the committee to provide some, like to review your request and provide some input to you as well. And we have lots of expertise on that committee. And I think what we're struggling with here is a process, right? So what do we do? Exactly. A, B, C, D. And so I don't think we need to form a separate working committee or some such thing for this project. I think we want to use the organizational stuff that we already have in place. So if we could, if your letter could reference perhaps having the committee on city-owned lands have it on their agenda and receive feedback through there, they might be able to provide recommendations to council as well.
So that was the committee that we were given 25 properties of, and we researched and did an audit, or is that a different committee?
Those 25 properties are also in the purview of the committee trying to provide recommendations back to City Council. And so recommendations back to City Council could include a conversation about your project as well.
Thank you.
So before we conclude here, I'd just like to ask our staff if any of them have anything they might want to offer into this discussion before we conclude that hasn't already been offered. Seeing nothing, thank you very much. Very exciting prospects. I really, really hope that we're not looking at multiple years, and amazing things can happen when people work together.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will they evacuate?
Yeah, I think so. It looks like a number of people are going to be leaving, so we'll have a 5-minute recess now.
Due for a meeting.
Yeah. Love the enthusiasm. And, I've heard this from so many angles. They're just so pumped up, and the best kind of thing people can be pumped up about.
Apparently.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was funny. They said they played.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They get creative. They're playing in parking lots all over the place. Amazing. There are two pickleball. They're concerned with.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Holy smokes.
Tennis ball. Different game. So it would have to be a roof as high as that super value. They use both.
Yeah.
Ball and tennis. The indoor. Yeah.
For a minute, I thought you meant the other side.
Okay, it looks like everybody's is gone. Okay, I'd like to reconvene us, please, and on to reports for decision 5-1 Powder River Community Forest 2024 Fall Grants, Manager of City Property Partnerships and Public Relations.
I would just like to, through the chair, invite Mr. Greg Hempel, the president of the Community Forest Board of Directors, to come up and present ahead of my report.
Thank you.
Evening, everybody. I wondered if the crowd was for us or for something else there. So, well, thanks for making time to go over our fall 2024 grant recommendations. We usually use this meeting as an opportunity to give a little bit of update on what we're doing with our operations, if that's okay. Short, we're into third quarter now, so Chris will help me with that. So, and then we'll go through the grant application recommendations, and I think they're pretty much in line with what Callie's got on her presentation there. And then we have a couple of asks and then a comment at the very end there. So if that's okay, shouldn't take too long there. The picture here is Coyote Ridge. That's right at the top end of our community forest there, one of our old growth areas. And maybe Chris, you can just say a few words about what's going on up there.
Sure, thanks, Greg. So yeah, this is an area that we're looking at to actually relocate the Sunshine Coast Trail up to the top of this ridge into the old growth. The Sunshine Coast Trail, where it bisects our community forest, is probably 70 to 80% on old road grades that will be in conflict with our future plans and not the nicest recreational experience. So this is just an example where we've actually walked up here with Eagle Waltz, myself and Greg, and looked at some locations up here which would make a much better trail experience and also avoid those conflicts that we're talking about. So yeah, QPAWS and QRCA and the Chain Gang, we've been spending some time working with them on just landing trails and locations that make sense for the long term, and just working together to improve the recreational experience for their users as well. So,
Thank you.
I should have, I think everybody knows Rod Tisdale. He's our vice president. Does everybody know him? Yeah, everybody's nodding? Okay. I could go over his resume. He's kind of the guru of forestry in Powell River. Okay, next slide. Okay, it's back to Chris. So, operations update. Like I say, busy year, but a little different year in terms of markets.
So most of this year we spent investing in our road networks and infrastructure. Some of these pictures up here you can see are some major culvert replacements on Green Road and up Granite Main. So the largest culvert this summer was a 9-foot diameter culvert that we installed, and we're just making these investments into these road systems so that when we move into these higher elevation areas with less profitable wood, we've already made that investment into the road system. That's a nice permanent road. So that's a couple of the pictures there. The other picture on the top right is an old rock quarry that we redeveloped in conjunction with one of the road projects. We're looking to open up these water sources to bolster our fire preparedness, and you can see the picture of our new fire truck. This was kitted out this year, and we had some training completed with both city and regional district fire crews. And this is the main purpose is to fulfill our operational requirements under the Wildfire Act, and it's much more well suited for these steeper roads as we start to move up the hillside, up Granite Main. The bottom right picture is a recent one from a week ago. This is out in H228, where we're currently harvesting, close to the Burma Junction or Suicide Creek Trail. Let's talk a little about we haven't done any harvesting for over a year now, so we were waiting for log markets to rebound, which hasn't happened. So what we're seeing is Douglas fir demand and pricing is down, and so what we've done is target harvest areas that are higher component of hemlock and cedar. So that's what we have here in this cut block, and the next cut blocks that we have planned are up Granite Mountain, and they have a very heavy hemlock component. So we hit the tail end of the log market last year with our record profits that Greg will be talking about. And we've gone more than a year with no log sales or revenue, and we're just starting operations now. So we are hoping to see a rebound in the log market next spring, especially if we get some interest rate changes here. But it's going to be a different year financially than what it was last year for community forest.
Thank you.
Got one more slide.
Okay.
I addressed everything on that slide. I'll just go over this one here. So I think Greg will have some pictures in his about the Mahoney parking lot. It was another recreational project that we worked on. We're also looking at improvements to the Burma parking lot, hopefully in conjunction with Rec Sites and Trails and QRCA. Another project that we were working on this year was working in collaboration with the Lahama Nation on their forest resource plan. So it's a higher level plan that goes across their whole territory, including the Powell River Community Forest. And we worked with them on, the big part of it was a conservation network. So 30% of each landscape unit is being protected in a conservation network identified in this forest resource plan, and we were working with Tla'amin Nation on that. These networks will target non-timber values, including old growth values, riparian species at risk, recreation, and act as a carbon sink. And we're also working with them on the many other components of that forest resource plan. Quick update, we spoke last time that we were starting in on a community watershed assessment procedure. That fieldwork has been completed. We're still working through the data analysis and report writing and hope to have something finalized in the next 2 or 3 months, which we will present to regional district and city council. That's all I had for operational updates. If there's any questions, I could answer those now.
Yeah, this would probably be a good time to go to questions. Councilor Dowd.
Yeah, so thanks for all that. It's good to hear about the stuff you're doing. I appreciate particularly filling us in on the conservation agreements that you're working on with the Tla'amin Nation. That's good to hear. The other thing is I hear you saying that there haven't been any log sales this year, and that's going to affect income this year. But I think you're saying it might happen next year. So we should be ready, I think, from what you're saying, for some unevenness in what the profits of the community forest are over the next few years. Am I right in that?
Yeah, just on the positive side, in our financials, we have the ability to retain and reserve monies for operations, obviously, but also monies to balance out future dividends there. And so with the 2023 dividend from last year, which was very good, we retain money to balance out what we thought was going to be a drop in the 2024 dividend. So we will have a healthy amount in the upcoming 2024 dividend. Would be obviously a lot more if we had record profits, but it'll still be a pretty healthy level there. Beyond that, if we do get market recovery, we're in the last year of our cut control period in 2025. So potentially we have more volume to log. And if we got a decent market, then we'll once again, this is thinking ahead, once again have a pretty good dividend there. So, I mean, markets are cyclic. We've been fortunate. We actually started in a down market there, and we've had pretty steady upward trajectory. But now we're over a year and a half into what's been a slide in the market. So hard to predict where it's going. There's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, in the economy, and there's no, you can't point to one thing and say that's what's causing it. But anyways, the 2024 dividend will be a healthy size, albeit not up to what you got last year.
Okay, so if there's a downturn in income from logs, it takes a while for the changes in dividends to cycle through. So there's a cushion there.
Yeah, we're logging now, but and then our board's asking Chris, well, are we going to get any log sales revenue this year? That's possible, but by the time you go through all the steps and get them to market and get the check in your hand, it's more likely the bulk of it will be into next year there. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Community Forest. So a couple of questions. I hope you'll bear with me. The dividend paid in the boom year, which was the $6,264,000, and I know you've heard me say before that we want to sort of equalize, like not necessarily do a boom of grants just because it was a great year, but rather try to equalize that. You're suggesting that there'll be another dividend, but it won't be based on the log sales for this year. It'll be based on stuff that you held back from before, and you're not quite sure where that's at yet. I expect you had operating costs this year without log sales that require a bit of a balancing act. And then you mentioned the plan that you were doing with the Tla'amin Nation, which I sit on the Western Forest Products Community Advisory Group as well, and we've been talking about that over in that area. There's a lot of indicators they're hoping everybody measures and reports out on, and which is going to probably have a cost driver for you. For us, it's our forest. And I just wondered if you were able to figure out any of that yet. And I know that Western Forest Products has just curtailed their own lumber operations quite significantly, and the prospects for log sales go down along with that. So the overall prospects for this next coming year to get some logging done based on the current markets might be significantly less in profit. What's your take on maybe doing less grants now in favor of some grants that might be really needed in a community that's really hurting next year? So that's my question.
Ongoing discussions with Mallory, and there will be money left over from that $6 million dividend. It's money in the fund that's not committed yet. So that'll carry forward as well as the new dividend there. So
do we know what that is, that number?
I'm sure Mallory would say it's just an estimate right now, and we would say the same thing. So there's that, and then we're getting it to it. You got 10 million sitting in the fund collecting interest. So you can imagine over the course of a year, that's a pretty good chunk of interest. So when I say it's going to be comfortable, all that contributes to the money that's going to be available next year. I don't know if that I mean, Mallory asked us for our projection on what the dividend looks like. We're a little bit reticent, but we do give her a number, but it's not I mean, you can't get ahead of that determination that's made as a result of your audited financials there. So, but Mallory does know what that number is.
So you're not really having an opinion on the question that I asked, which was the wisdom around giving out a little less today in order to be able to make more flexible decisions for our community in the future. And so that was, I wondered if you had any wise words for that.
Yeah, well, we are. In fact, if you look at the amount available and the amount we're granting this fall, this is one of the lowest amounts we're granting there. And we've actually pushed off a couple of big requests because we feel, and we'll go through this, but because we feel they're not ready with those ones there. So, and then from the city's point of view, they got there was no city projects in the fall take up. And you'll see there's a big backlog of incomplete projects. So that money's not going anywhere. It's committed, but not being used right now. So I don't know if that, I mean, basically what we have is some forecasts. We definitely pay attention to that sort of stuff. Like one of the ones that Chris is well aware of is that the pool roof project. We had a request in for another 2.8 million or something like that on top of it, basically overall cost of $6 million of grant funds. But in talking to Tor at the spring process, Tor said, we're not going to be ready for that, but if you can commit to that in the spring of 2025, that should be good enough. So we're putting that in the back for our calculations for money we need available in the grants out of the Community Forest Fund for the spring. So you're covered on that second large grant.
Right.
So 2 largest grants ever, pool roof project, like largest by far, right? So, and we're assuming those are still the biggest priority. There's probably a tipping point where it's better just to finance it, but we're not there yet. So the current budget says this additional grant will cover that project. So.
Okay, so you're kind of comfortable that you've considered my question and where we're at is the best balance?
Yeah, Chris can.
As part of the information we shared with city staff, and I'm assuming it went to the council with the Dropbox links, it had all that specified out at the bottom of that Excel file with an estimate on the budget or on the dividend for next year, and just how much money was going to be left over for projects that come in under application next year. So that's all in that Excel file for council to view.
I haven't seen the drop file. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. But yeah, the answer is yes, we do consider all those things there. So the other thing, yeah, there'll be a downturn, but we're pretty comfortable, and we've always said this to council, we're going to have money in there every year for community projects there. And, you know, we're, 16 years into this, and that's kind of held true there. So unless something really weird happens with the economy, I think we'll be okay. So, okay.
Councillor Palm.
Chair, through the chair, first of all, I want to say thanks for coming in again today, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to see Community Forest here and all the great things that you do for our community. I just have one question in terms of the overall forest industry, and there seems to be a lot of negative comments about government interaction and lack of whatever. I'm not sure, I'm not up to speed on it, but how much does government policy, how much does that affect? I know it affects the north greatly. How does it affect you down here?
Yeah, geez, there's a question there. I mean, the interior is under major constraints. Their timber base has gone down as a result of the beetle uplift. Well, now you're seeing a fall down. They've had huge forest fires. And sometimes it's not just the amount, it's where that was located. So you're seeing mills shut down and those sorts of things. It's mostly about fiber supply there. So the other uncertainty, which we really feel on the coast, is just, you know, the uncertainty around, are we going to get permits and plans? Now, Community Forest has some advantages there. And Chris does a good job working with the ministry on that sort of stuff. So we can't say that's a huge thing. It does have a factor in markets and investment security and those sorts of things there. But a lot of the stuff you're seeing on the news relates to what's happening in the overall industry, and particularly the interior. So we're still pretty bullish on where it's going there. And as you know, right beside us is the Tla'amin Community Forest there, and they're doing the same. So we have a good model. Our cost structures, we're not an integrated company, so we can afford to just be market loggers, which we're not feeding mills and having the upturn on lumber sales. So that does give us some advantages. And Chris has done a good job of being well ahead in the planning and engineering. So we got options, like he's describing. If we need a block with hemlock in, we got something that's permitted and ready to go there.
Didn't hear you say government red tape, but I heard you.
Oh yeah, it's there.
I've got a couple of questions. On the last slide, watershed was the last point. But before we hit that, the 30% of each landscape unit going under conservation considerations, is that consistent with the province's 30 by 30 policy? That's the first question. Related to that is, can you speak to how you're addressing ecological and conservation values? Like, how does that be?
In 30 seconds? Well,
Yeah,
just go back to the Tla'amin territory plan.
Yeah.
Our legal plan is called a forest stewardship plan. The Tla'amin planning is something we bought into. I think it's fair to say, while it does put some restriction on, we were already, our practices already had taken account for a lot of that stuff. We've been well ahead on the planning side of things. So it's kind of one thing Obviously, you need their approval to operate in terms of consultation and that. So I think we didn't have as far to go as some of the other licensees, and including Tla'amin's own industry. So I think it'll work out fine. We're comfortable. We actually, when we did our timber supply review, we opted for a lower cut level to give Chris opportunities to do more site-specific measures. The 30 by 30, not familiar with that, honestly. Yeah, maybe Chris knows more.
Yeah, I think that was the intent. Tla'amin was driving the processes and modeling in the background, so I didn't see everything, but that was the intent. It is by landscape unit. I think it is also by BEC unit. And the goal of the conservation network is to cover a lot of those ecosystems at risk and to manage for those values.
Thank you. That is that's reassuring. You know, I don't think there's been a lot of it, but there has been definitely some criticism over, you know, in recent years that I've been aware of. So that's reassuring. And I hear you saying implicitly that you've paid attention to that kind of feedback that's come to you. My next way of, you know, I'm assuming that, and I appreciate that. Regarding the watershed, 20 years ago, there was a provincial survey that focused on temperatures for Lang Creek and survivability of salmon. We're now in the target era of that study. So there has been I know there's been some conversation in the community. It hasn't come to this table. But can you comment on your consideration of that, particularly as it relates to temperatures? I think the concern still, well, it definitely exists, and we're kind of at that point 20 years down the road now from that study.
Yeah, we overlap large portions of Haslam Lake watershed and Lang Creek watershed.
Yeah.
Chris talked about the community watershed assessment procedure, that we do that every 5 years.
Right.
The other thing to be aware of is we fund Powell River Salmon Society to do water quality, temperature, flow in both watersheds. And that's gone on for how many years? 25 years. So, and all those reports are made public on the Salmon Society website. And like, for instance, I think it was 2021 was the heat dome. So you can go to 2021 and say, well, okay, what was the effect on that? And those reports are rolled up by independent environmental company there. And they're also doing the community watershed assessment procedure. We thought it would be more valid if we had a third party with vested interest in water quality. The other thing when we do the CWAP is both the city and regional district staff are invited to be there for the presentation by the consultant there. So that will be coming up this upcoming spring here. So.
I personally appreciate that. Having interest in conservation that relates to other activities in my life. I'm also appreciative of that diligence, and this is partly why I asked this question, because the work is being done and has been. I've been aware that that data is on the Salmon Society's website, and that has been appreciated by more than me. It is people who are interested in this community are referring to that, especially with regard to current phenomenon of that relates to climate. So. Thank you. That also leads me to my general, and I believe I speak for many, this table, those who are not here, profound appreciation for the scope and depth of the work that is done by your board, Mr. Hemphill and the company. Yeah, I know who's doing a lot of the groundwork and the long term that's been in effect. So many years of appreciation here, and here we are at this juncture, benefiting in a profound way. Thank you so much.
And well, just in terms of relationship with the Salmon Society, I remember when we were starting out, every event that happened, that's because of logging and that sort of stuff. So once we got ingrained into the water testing and having report out on that by independent consultants and go, okay, we now understand, to the point where they invite one of our directors to be president of the Salmon Society. That's Rod here. So the relationship is quite a bit different than when we started out there. And there's the risks to the watershed have been identified more clearly, and sometimes it's just cows going through creeks and stuff like that. So,
thank you very much.
Okay, we better get going. This was going to be the quick part of our presentation there. So, when we come, I know sometimes there's a frustration that are we getting any of these projects done? I know some of the bigger ones. It's you get the reports every year and go, what's happening? Just cobbled together a few slides. I could have kept going, could have had a 20-minute presentation here, but just a few. And top one, obviously, Salmon Society. We consider them a partner in a lot of things we do. They just had their Salmon Expo last week, and record turnouts, even though there was a rainstorm on the Friday with all the school kids in Powell River, and then big turnout on the Saturday, which wasn't much better weather-wise there. So they've done well, good returns, huge chum run this year. So. And then another one where we're, as part of our social license is to help support those folks that are out there for call out, especially in the recreation community, explosion and recreation use of the backcountry. And so one of the grants you'll see come up tonight is related to Powell River Search and Rescue, 100% volunteer, and they're out there when nobody else wants to there. So. Next one. Also coming forward is phase 2 of the Mount Mahoney bike network. Obviously, phase 1, they've done a great job of going through that project there. Results are pretty impressive. So we've been working on, we grind all the applicants in terms of getting down to a number, but we're very happy with the phase 2 number that's coming forward, and that will basically finish the main network that they have there. And it's like Jim was talking about some of the other sports, mountain biking. There's people coming across on the ferry with their mountain bikes on the back of their truck. So kind of wonder if you're careful what you ask for if you're somebody that doesn't like other people riding in your same trails there. So Chris mentioned the Coquette Parks and Wilderness Society. We have obviously Elk Lake Cabins in the community forest, and we're the main jumping off point for the Walt Hill Cabin as well. We did a grant, or council approved a grant to upgrade their outhouses to composting toilets there. And I think almost more important than a shelter after long days of hiking is a nice outhouse there. So they have that now. So. Everybody's familiar with the Patricia Theater. We had discussions with them going back over 10 years, and there was barriers. They were not having success fundraising, private ownership, unpaid bills, all those sorts of things. But they stuck with it. We always said is if they could take control of the property, we would help them out. So this was a grant probably 2 years ago, and they managed to leverage other provincial grants and stuff like that. I think the only thing left to do there with the current grants is they are going to put an awning back on the front there. So because I was the guy who was sort of saying, hey, we're not going to, and they weren't happy all the time when we said, you're not getting a grant until you deal with the ownership issue. It's pretty satisfying to get to this point, and they're pretty happy that they've gotten this far. It's a labor of love for sure. So, couple of other slides here. One is and I have other pictures, but when you're trying to put it together quickly, so the one on the left obviously is the outrigger folks. That's the team that went to Hawaii and won the world championship for their age group. But it's more than that. If you go to Shingle Mill, and there's all kinds of new canoes and also dragon boats, and so it's the growth is pretty fast on something that, I think they started with one dragon boat, the dragon boaters anyway. So I think we actually did a grant in the spring for the Texada folks. They now have a dragon boat too, and come across for I don't know if they call them tournaments or what they call them there. So regatta. And then on the right, this is the West Coast Wind Swim Club. Recreation staff will be aware of them. There's always this concern about underutilization of the facilities, and I know our board member that did the follow-up, they've got a pretty ambitious plan to not only build the competitive side of swimming, but also get together with the other groups that are there. So good to see, and more use is always good for this facility there. Sometimes these little projects, little grants, pretty cool. Like those two on the drive by those. That's pretty impressive for a small amount of money. And then you see the sign on that's at Townsite Mall. That was sort of the forerunner to getting going on some of these other signs around town. They're pretty important there. You see that one was a partnership with QRCA and Community Forest there. So yeah, you just got to make them happen. You probably saw the notification there. We contributed actually a small portion funding for the new vehicle for Evergreen, and what's the other one? No, not Kiwanis. There's a third one there, but and then the hospital auxiliary contributed the most for that van. So they just got it purchased, and kind of cool to see it's in use already. So. Climbing gym, we did a grant in the spring for a Holds cleaning system, and they're thriving down there. So, and Sycamore Gardens, it's one of our applications. They had a very modest little request to get the gardens back in shape. They took a beating between COVID and also not having some sort of sprinkling system. So if you go by there now, you see people wandering through there. It's a neat little garden. So they've come back and said, yeah, we should have asked for money for a shed. So we're doing that. So neat little ones that make a big impact for our community there. And then just pointing out, we've talked about this before, where we have some clubs that have had their ups and downs. And I remember when I curled, it's quite a while ago, they had buckets on the ice because the roof was leaking there. Well, you can see they're thriving, and just like the city, they had a project to put solar panels on to reduce their energy use there. And so most of that was us contributing to a matching infrastructure grant from the federal government there. So in my notes, you'll see at the bottom, this is 100+ women who care. And Paul actually did a great article in the Peak. They've wrapped up their operations. I think 7 years. We matched during that time, most of that time, we matched their contributions. So basically, they're putting in their own money and then giving them out. They have a whole process of assessing nominated groups and that. So I think Tara said it right. There probably wasn't a group in nonprofit in Powell River that didn't get on the receiving end of those. And so good for us. It picked up a lot of groups that, for whatever reason, either didn't match up to our evaluation criteria, or they're so small that they didn't feel like they were eligible, or those sorts of things there. So it's going to leave a bit of a hole that way. So I'll just go back. I do want council to join us in congratulating the organizing committee for what they've done. And I'd certainly be prepared to help draft something if we wanted to do a joint letter or something like that. So you'll see that in our formal grant recommendation letter. So let us know something, perhaps the mayor can sign there. So. Oh, and of course, nice sunny day back in the spring there with our record-sized dividend there. So those are always good. Okay, just a little about where we are with the fund. So, and we've talked a bit about that. Record-sized 2023 dividend of 6 million, over 6 million. We declare that at our board in the spring, and we also at that time make a determination as to whether we want to hold money in reserve. So we held lots of money in reserve for operations and balancing the next dividend there. So this brings the total amount deposited to the fund since its inception to $31 million. Pretty impressive. So, as I said, falling even back when we had our AGM, the market was going south then. So it was a pretty easy decision to retain monies there. So the big number, community forest grants awarded, but projects not complete. It's kind of a brokered record for us because the ultimate is to see completed projects there. So the city has over $9 million of that. Community groups is about $1 million. Most of that is with the Miclac TWC project, and I notice they're banging nails away there, which is good to see. So there is a status report that staff circulates. So you probably, well, I know you've had an update on your capital plan. So we get that report each time we go through the grant applications there. Back in the spring, quite a large number of grants were awarded. I know it was asked, how come fewer grants in the fall? Well, partly because we did so many in the spring there. So we allocated 3.4 million. And if you totaled up the grants since inception, it was 284. And I can show you every one of them. Not, but I can drive around. I know our former treasurers, when he had guests in town or family members, he would make them drive around with him and he'd point them out there. So I'm not quite there yet. So the city has not applied for fall 2024 grants, mostly to concentrate on the backlog of unfinished grant projects. By doing that, it also makes sure we have, to Cindy's point, we have more funds carrying over to the 2025 spring grant process there. So we have a set of recommendations for 12 grants. I think our number is the same as Callie's. There are a couple, we're going to go to the letter. There are a couple others that we'll carry forward to spring 2025 based on what's happening right now. And then I mentioned there is a second application for 2.8 million for the Compex pool roof. And that one project will have over 6 million allocated towards it there by the time spring rolls around. So I think the big question for council is the same question as this year, is how likely is it going to be if the project will proceed there. So it's something to think about when you're, and I'm going to talk a little bit about forecasting that as we go along here. So So this, I think you've seen the recommendation letter from staff. This, I think, is in line with that. Just a couple at the top, the Powell River Search and Rescue Society building infrastructure improvements. This is not new money. This is, they had a previous grant and they had some issues with their contractor, big issues. And so this is a restructuring, and the city was good enough to address it that way. And so it's not, the total amount's not that much different than the original grant there. So there's Kelly Creek's a top up. You know, they actually they've done a lot down there, but they applied right at the deadline. And so the number that was allocated was under what they originally needed there. Talked about West Coast Wind Swim Club. They actually applied earlier. It was a very nominal amount that we thought staff would just fund it out of operations, but I guess money's tight there. So what other ones here that, the Cathett Museum and Archives Society, lots of back and forth on that. And because some of the work would be on city infrastructure, it's been structured so that a couple of the items, replacement door and security, the city will handle. Truthfully, the city handles the whole budget anyway. So, but on paper, it shows as a split there. So, so yeah, I mean, the only question we would have is if the city's saying, okay, we're going to take that over. I mean, it was an application from the society. They had a quote from a local contractor, and it's a door replacement. Should be good to go. So the question is going to be to the city, how quickly can you do it? It's a safety issue there. So, but I trust that their staff have already on that. So, what else is on there that? So if you drop down, keep dropping down here. So there was two that we understood the city was still in reviewing or in discussion. One was, I think the city council asked for a staff report on the BC Transit or options with BC Transit regarding a bus shelter at Town Center Mall. So that application will carry over. There is an application from the mall owner, and some of that wouldn't take place because it was retroactive, but the concept is still in the application, and the spring, I suppose, we're going to find out if council really wants to put community forest money to that one. The other one the council's aware of, we understand through liaison have been engaged with Children, Youth and Family Services Society around the Foundry Cathett initiative. Big request, $1 million. We thought it was kind of premature based on the level of detail we got, but quite happy that those discussions are taking place with council. So that one will carry over to our spring process there. They're probably both important community projects, but I think it's not something we want to get involved in at this point there. And then I've already talked about 100 Women Who Care there. So just on the bottom there, and I think everybody knows this, but existing applications that are not selective remain under consideration for the next application review, and they can be adjusted at any time. We're pretty open with applicants where we don't think it fits our criteria. Where council don't think it fits, then we would ask council or senior staff to communicate that back to the applicants there. I mean, our evaluation is based on our criteria, effectively the policy there. So if the reasons are get crossing over into quasi-political stuff, we'll let somebody else answer those questions there. Okay, so just wanted to touch on, I have a couple of requests. Well, they're joint. And then one comment there. So the request is, really comes, and it's not new, it's just for those, the city has all kinds of user groups, tenants, leaseholders, and the city staff want those projects to be under the control of city. And so what happens though is they submit an application and the staff say, well, we got to put it through a separate process to whether included in the capital plan and that sort of stuff. So the museum and archives is a good example. They applied in the spring and now we're dealing with it in the fall, and staff is asking for more time to look at issues that were there in the spring. So the only thing we're asking is we're not questioning that one. We're asking staff to be more proactive in making contact with all these groups that are out there. I think at a lower level, they have ongoing discussions with the recreation operation people, but at a administrative level, which involves grants and that, it's a matter of doing a check-in. So like a good example is if it's a good example because it's real. If one of those Timber Lane Club buildings needs a new roof, that should be known ahead of time so it can be included in the capital planning process, which I guess is starting pretty soon. So that's the request. Just a little, it's not one-sided. You can't sit back and wait for these guys to apply and then, so sorry, you didn't give us a heads up. So two-way process there. So the second one relates to the package you got from city staff regarding the effects on taxation. And it's an interesting spin, but we never really thought we'd see something in writing where a grant to a community for a community project to a nonprofit is seen as a tax liability to the city. Like it's crazy to us. We always were under the impression that we were actually relieving the city of some tax pressures there. So it's an interesting spin. I don't know if you've read the end of the recommendation letter from the city, but we have a hard time understanding that. So that's all we have to say.
Okay, over to questions and discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're good. I think, Callie,
so hang out because you're probably going to have all sorts of questions to answer here. Councillor Dowd and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So,
Councillor Elliott, it was Councillor Dowd before.
Sorry. So, from particularly the last few minutes of your discussion, I think you've opened up some input. We could be here all night talking about the details of what you've just said over the last one, and I think there's room for lots of discussions about the relationship between the city and the community forest. I just through to the chair, I was hoping we could get to the recommendation of approving all of these grants that are being recommended here tonight. Maybe we could do that first and get to all the questions about the interaction with between the city and the community forest.
Well, absolutely okay for us. We would like to do that. We're supportive of the report in terms of the ones that and the numbers that I guess Callie's putting forward there. So there's no issue there, and obviously be really pleased if we can support those at committee of the whole and go directly to council in 2 days there.
But if the chair would be okay with it, I'd read the recommendation in the package. Okay, that the committee recommend that council direct staff to amend the City of Powell River 2024 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742/2024 to include projects in the amount of $412,015.98 as recommended in the letter dated October 16th, 2024 from the Powell River Community Forest Limited, attached as Appendix A to the staff report titled Powell River Community Forest 2024 Fall Grants and dated October 22nd, 2024. And that the committee recommend that council direct staff to amend the City of Powell River 2024 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742/2024 to include a capital project for up to $15,000 in security upgrades to the museum building funded by the Powell River Community Forest Reserve Fund. And if there's a second, I'll speak to that for a moment. Okay, I think the community forest has done a lot of work going through these, and obviously there's more discussions to be had about the future of how we determine the grants, but I'd like to accept these grants tonight because there are many deserving groups in the community that are waiting to hear about them. And before I stop talking, I want to say thank you to the community forest for all of the work you do, for taking care of the forest, for raising these funds, and for going through the work of vetting the applications and making sure they're good quality applications for good projects. I agree with what you're saying about the 100 women who care. They've made amazing contributions to the city with your group, and it's going to be sad to see them go. I think they're leaving a hole. Maybe we get 100 men who care next. Try it that way. But the thing I like about this community is everybody's ability to pitch in and everybody's willingness to support volunteers who make this a great place to be. But I hope we pass this and then we can move on to the rest of it.
Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I have just one question, and it has to do with the last time we were discussing grants. We talked about how there were capital projects within our capital management plan that fit the criteria for community forests. And I'm just wondering if we've reviewed that and we have that information for the upcoming things within our capital plan that would fit with community forests so that we can understand. So the concept that you were finding hard to understand was simply an attempt to talk about opportunity costs. And it's a economic term that means the other things you could have spent it on. And so without attaching those to actual legitimate expenditures that we would have to make, it's a little bit meaningless. And so the tie back is to, have we discussed the city's capital plan and the items in it in 25, 26 that would fit the envelope of community forests so that we can understand the opportunity costs when we're assessing these recommendations?
Yes, we haven't had the discussions, but Mallory Shop is beginning the process of the next capital plan. The issue before was the spring grants came up, and no discussion on the grant on the community forest stuff. At the same time, council was reviewing the city's capital plan to eventually make a decision. So what Mallory had said at the time and what she's putting in play is that we will begin jointly discussions on which potential projects are a better match to the Community Forest Fund bylaw. And we've always said, hey, let's sit down. There is projects that are a better fit than perhaps ones that are being considered there. So that process, I think, is going to unfold probably in the next month here. So yeah, that'll happen, and it's good for us because we don't want to be having those debates when we're adjudicating grants there. Those discussions should take place ahead of time so everybody's on the same page there. So we're kind of in that game right now where we're approving grants, and And then the city is saying, well, hold on, we don't have it in our capital plan there. And when you've had groups come to council and say, hey, we got a great project for you, but it's outside the capital plan. So you either have to have a situation where you can amend the plan as you go, which is not a bad thing, but I'm sure you want some sort of certainty for budgeting and those sorts of things. So yeah, the answer is yes. We will have those discussions ahead of the spring process there. And I think we'll have a pretty good set agreement on where the bylaw fits and where it doesn't there.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Just to add to that, Greg wasn't at the meeting, but Rod and I did meet with Callie and Mallory, and we did bring, we tried to pick a few items off the capital plan, but with discussions, and maybe Callie can follow up on it, but it sounds like the complex is going to be the focus, but there's still too many moving parts. So I think that was a message that we received at that meeting, is that there's lots of stuff happening at the complex that we'll be looking at in the spring, I'm assuming.
Okay.
Just more philosophically, if you go back, well, Jim would remember this because he was the liaison to recreation. There was a time when everybody recognized that the complex was the biggest drain on finances, and geez, do we have to look at shutting down portions of it? It's underutilized, those sorts of things. Of course, things evolve. But the discussion at the time, because it is that need to do versus nice to do, recreation by definition is a nice to do. So looking at back in the day, looking at strategic priorities, that the complex, recreation, arts, those types of things were treated as something we would target helping out there. So I used to meet with Director Ray Bogarts, and he would give me a shopping list, and we'd go, yep, no, yep, and he'd be quite comfortable with that. And so the list of actual projects in the complex is pretty long. So we don't have a problem with doing that. It's a little more formal now. It's more organic before. But yeah, we're all up for that. So.
Then I had a question for staff. The in the presentation, the issue of interest earned on monies in the reserve accounts, and I wanted to ask: is interest earned on any of our reserve accounts go back to that exact reserve account, or is it handled differently than that? Because I wasn't sure about that.
Through the chair, yes. So interest is allocated across all of the reserve accounts based on the interest that was earned throughout the year. So it's something that we do at the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And that is something Mallory's given a sort of real rough estimate on how much interest is going to be generated when it rolls around to the spring there. So big money in there, obviously. So.
Yeah, I think when the interest was high, it was great. I don't know that we got the same high interest everybody else did, but.
It's pretty good on $10 million. So.
Councillor Paul.
Just before I get into my three questions to the chair, just to clarify what you just said, that interest stays in the community forest reserve. Is that correct? Because I didn't hear you.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. So I have, in terms of the overall presentation and recommendation here, I have three questions, and I'm asking these questions on behalf of Community Forest that is still seeking answers on a couple of these, and so am I. And that is city non-completed projects totals over $9 million. And I see that the complex roof is now estimated at contributed over $6 million. So do we have any further timeline or idea of whether that project will go forward or not?
Through the chair, we have a general idea. We've recently had our pool basin tested, which was something that had not been done before in the previous rehabilitation report. Pool basin is usually the first to go in a pool, and therefore we wanted to assess whether or not there was the entire value of putting that expensive of a roof on if the basin was not going to last. The basin report assessment has been done. We're awaiting the report. As soon as the report is received, if we get a green light, we can build the tender package with our engineering team for the actual roof. So that's what we're anticipating and hoping for. We should get that report within days. We thought we would actually have it by the engineering firm at this point. And once received, we can then start building that actual tender package.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. And secondly, the one that comes up that didn't get funded is obviously the mall bus shelters. At great expense, that owner put in our new turnaround for buses and that station that's application 275. Have we had any reply from BC Transit in terms of whether they will help the community out with those shelters?
Through the chair, there has been some back and forth. We're still working with them to see. We were initially seeing if they could work it into their improvement program that they presented about last time they were here. So there may be some funding opportunity from BC Transit. There's some nuances there. So we were hoping to bring something to council at the first meeting in November.
Oh, excellent, because winter months are coming. That would be much appreciated, especially in light of the fact that I think it was about 3 years ago we were going to install shelters in Wildwood, which I don't think has happened yet.
Yeah, well, they did a grant for shelters in both Wildwood and Townside, I believe. And then BC Transit actually came to the table and pitched in for a couple more. It was part of a bigger plan, but BC Transit said, well, we don't really know our bus routes going forward, so it kind of got put on hold. But we have invested, or the city has invested grant funds previously. But yeah, I think complicated issues when it comes to private ownership of the land.
I understand complicated.
Yeah.
And that draws me to my last comment, and that is, I'm sitting here and I read the report before coming here, and when I read the section on financial implications and tying some of these grant opportunities to nonprofits and saying that is causing increases in taxation, I am sitting here with my stomach churning. Not in the report. It is absolutely disgusting. Sitting where I've been for 16 years, $31 million later, and seeing that in this report. I just have to say that, Chair. It is very, very annoying to me. Thank you.
Since we're on questions that could lead to amendments, that's the only reason why we're continuing the discussion, because it's a very simple resolution in my view. I'm going to, in case Councillor Dowd had any reservations about the continuing discussion while there's a there's a motion on the floor. This is more curiosity than anything, because the documentation available to us is reasonably thorough in the case of this particular question, but the 383, the Texada fire apparatus. Can you describe exactly what that is? It looks to me like it's a glorified ATV.
Yep.
I was first thinking maybe it was like a deck on the back of a truck, but
yeah, there's a lot of different versions of initial attack vehicles in wildfire management. They opted for what they call a UTV, so it can go anywhere. The piece if the grant's approved, it's contributing about less than a third of the cost. The community there has fundraised for the rest of it. And yeah, they're knowing the terrain over there, they wanted to get something that was kind of go anywhere, just to do that initial tamp the fire down. I guess they get quite a few abandoned campfires and those types of things. And so it's not going to really address even like our unit, it's not going to be able to stand in the way of a big fire, but it certainly, if you get there quick, then there's a better chance of it not becoming a large fire. So that's their plan. Yeah, they're unique in that they're an improvement district type of situation, but they're in the community, and like I say, the bulk of it they've raised themselves. So,
thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I just wanted to express appreciation for everybody and all of their information bringing forward. I appreciate understanding opportunity costs and what that looks like. The opposite side of that is, your multiplier effect and the leverage you're getting from volunteers and other things in the community that balances those things out. But the provision of information that helps everybody, me, the community, understand alternatives and what we're trying to balance during the upcoming budgetary process at a time when our mill has made things a little bit hard here. I want to make sure everybody understands that all of the information is valuable and none of it is intended to hurt anybody. Just help us think through the decisions that are coming up. And opportunity costs are relevant. They're not meant to hurt you or make you feel disgusted. They're meant to help inform what things we're trying to balance when we're making our decisions for our entire community. So I appreciate everybody's information, everybody's perspectives, and I just value them all. Thank you.
Yeah, and just I know you get lots of advice on governance and legal and all that sort of stuff. Regardless, for us, whether it's in camera or public, we're quite comfortable discussing the process we go through with our grants. And most of that comfort comes from having talked to just about all the groups that apply. And there's a trust there that we'll do the right thing in terms of following the policy and the bylaw and those sorts of things there. And like I said, the easy part is the discussion ahead of time. Sometimes the harder part is when you don't approve a grant. So we always keep that in mind there. Sometimes we'd happily turn that over.
Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the lost my page here. The West Coast Wind one. I was skimming through their application. I noticed their request was higher than what was granted, but I'm guessing that's the caps and the clothing that because they're not capital items was removed.
Yeah, and some of it is more like are you getting a little carried away in your request? And apparel is something we prefer not to go down that path. So a lot of these applications, we have the discussion. They go, yeah, you know what, we can drop that. So yeah, that's the other thing. I know we got into that later on when you're doing the payouts on the approved grants, and then going back through the paperwork to find out what the amount is. Yeah, a lot of them changed from the application, so that tracking is sometimes a challenge there. So, thank
you.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to call a question right after I make one comment, and that is that, not to reiterate what Councillor Elliott is saying, but in these times of change, we certainly do need to look at every possible option, regardless of how distasteful or uncomfortable they might be from different perspectives. But I do want to respect we also look at the history and the previous benefits, and more particularly the evolution that's gone on over the years. I was here during, I think, the discussions of the committee that resulted in Policy 261, and that was a big change from the way it happened before. So there has been change over the years, and I definitely appreciate that. I know the fundamental concern of us all is to do the very best for our community. And again, I have deep appreciation for the community forest in looking after that concern. So unless Councillor Palm.
Just have to respond to a couple of the comments that are made here. And the point that I was trying to make is that for 16 years, benefit this community has received, generous contributions of our community forward, and all their fine work over that period of time. There has never been a reference to taxation. Let's make that point perfectly clear. Thank you very much, Chair.
All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Councillor Doubt's got his.
Councillor Doughton.
You reached a lot of questions about the relationship between the city and the community forest, and I think there's work to be done on that relationship. You mentioned a letter earlier that you were unhappy about, that was about taxation. You said, I don't think I've seen that letter.
Oh, it's in your agenda package.
It's in the report.
Yeah. It's just right at the bottom of the agenda package. And it's just, yeah.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's better to read it and wrap your head around it there. And then, you know, it leads to other kind of obvious questions, you know, like that chunk of money that's sitting there. And I mean, that's the piece we don't quite understand. Municipal finance is if you've got $10 million in a fund and you don't use it during that year, isn't that a saving? I don't know. Like, I don't know how it works. Same thing, like you got 120 staff and vacancies every year. Is that a saving? I think it is. And when you're doing projections, you're always aware that you're going to have vacant positions, right? So that's the part I like, the link between the plan and the actuals. I mean, in the province, that was part of what we did. We had to forecast retirements, forecast vacancies. Was common to put a hiring freeze on midway through if they wanted to scoop some money. I'm sure staff go through that process. So what we don't understand is if you save 1 year, can you carry it over? Those types of things. I'm not really sure. Didn't work in the province. They scooped that money and spent it elsewhere. But, yeah, that part I don't understand. Like, we've seen your capital plan and some of the budget projections. Are those based on the plan, or are they based on what's likely to happen? So the comment about the pool roof project, I think, is a good one. When are you going to start spending money is really more the question. Like, if the pressure is 2025, how much did that $6 million do you have to spend in 2025, or is it really realistically it's more of a 2026 thing, right? So that's all we pose the questions. We don't know the answers, but that's the part we don't understand when we talk budget pressures and that stuff.
To reiterate what Councillor Doudt said, I think these discussions will carry on and there will be more answers forthcoming. And there's one final piece of business, and that's the letter that you requested. I'd like to suggest by unanimous consent, we direct staff to work with you on that letter from the mayor.
And I can send a draft even, because I have the original organizing group names and that.
Is that, we all agree to that? Great. And Councillor Elliott, you had one final comment or?
Well, I think conversations with our CFO would definitely help you with a lot of those questions. But in general, it depends on whether you're talking about a capital plan versus operational budgets and how they're handled differently, right? Yeah. The thing we try to do is put money in the reserve before we have to spend it on our capital plan. And if you didn't spend it that year and the capital project is still in the books, it's not a savings. It's often gets more expensive as time goes on. So, so the answer is no, it's not a savings if it's in the in reserve fund, if it's in reserve and allocated to a particular project. We risk manage a little bit of our reserves in that we don't receive enough money for all of our obligations in the capital plan all of the time. And we count on receiving a certain amount of grants to help us with that. The city is not allowed to run a deficit like the province or any other governments are. So if we run short for any reason, we can't do anything about that. It just kind of cuts stuff off. And so generally speaking, our unallocated operational things at the end of the year, you can ask Ms. Dennison if I'm correct, but they tend to end up in underfunded reserves that we haven't taxed enough to put enough money in. And it's part of our regular way of trying to get our reserves where they need to be to take care of our obligations. I don't know if that answers your question.
It's probably more complicated because
It's complicated.
it lapses over into salaries. And I know the province already said, well, no, there's a hard line until they needed it. And then the hard line went away. Well, we can use this money. But at the beginning of the year, no, you can't touch salaries. That's your allocation. If it's savings go back and all those sorts of things there. So,
well, we're not the province.
It's always an interesting process there. Anyways, we're kind of digressing here.
Thank you again very much. And I think since we're at our 2-hour mark, I'd like to suggest we have a 5-minute recess. I definitely need one. And then come back in session again. Good then. But this was going to be this is supposed to be a short agenda. This was supposed to be a short agenda.
Well, you know, Straightforward.
Sure. Okay. Okay, I'd like to call us back to order. 5.2, temporary use permit 005, renewal emergency shelter 4746 Joyce Avenue. Mr. Gao.
Good evening, Council. I am here to present a report related to the existing shelter. The purpose of the report is to consider a renewal application for temporary use permit 005, which permits non-commercial short-term overnight accommodation at 4746 Joyce Avenue for the purposes of an emergency shelter for the 2024-2025 winter season. Going back into history, Council considered and granted issuance of TUP 005 that permitted Lift Community Services to operate a 20-bed emergency shelter at that location in December of 2021 for a 3-year term that expires December 14th of this year. What's proposed today is that Council consider a 3.5 or 3.5 month renewal of TUP 005 for the emergency shelter. I also want to highlight that it is, I want to highlight the ownership of 4746 Joyce has changed, and the new owner has informed Lyft that they will not renew the lease for the emergency shelter when it expires on March 31st, 2025. And as a result, Lyft has made application to the city to renew the temporary use permit to align with the remaining duration of their lease. So 3.5 months will allow the shelter to remain open through till the end of this winter season. In terms of any communication and engagement, Section 494 of the Local Government Act does require public notice at the time of issuance. However, there is no legislated notice requirement for renewal. I will add that it is an option for Council to consider that, and if we got that direction, we'd be prepared to issue notice tomorrow with the idea that it would be coming back for Council's consideration on November 7th. There is some urgency to that particular date, as Lyft at some point will need to engage their staff if there is not support for this application. They'll need to start letting their staff know that they will no longer have a role at the shelter through the winter season. So you have a recommendation before you. It is that members of the committee recommend that Council issue a renewal of temporary use permit 005 to allow non-commercial short-term overnight accommodation use at 4746 Joyce Avenue, legally described as Lot 1, Plan 12457 of Lot A, Block 22, District Lot 5036, Plan 6977, commencing December 15th, 2024 and ending March 31st, 2025. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. So we'll go to questions first. Councillor Elliott.
Oh, I don't have a question. It was a really clear report. I understand the nature of the request, and I was prepared to make the motion.
I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
I recommend that members of this committee recommend that Council renew temporary use permit 005 to allow non-commercial short-term overnight accommodation use at 4746 Joyce Avenue, legally described as Lot 1, except part in Plan 12457 of Lot A, Block 22, District Lot 5036, Plan 6977, commencing December 15th, 2024, and ending March 31st, 2025.
Second, Councilor Almeida. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Gao. Okay, reports for information, community belonging, policy impact forum, VCH 2024-2025, community investments grant application. Mr. Gao.
Thanks again, Council. This is more for your awareness. This is related to the community belonging project. This is something that you learned about last year, November of 2023. But also in April of this year, Council resolved that staff be directed to work with the community belonging team to apply for funding eligible for municipalities that can support the community belonging project. So what you have included as part of the memo is the grant application that was prepared largely by the community belonging project, but it is something that needs to be applied for by the city. It was suggested that we bring it before you. We're not looking for your direction. You've already given that direction for staff to work with the community belonging team, but we thought it would be a great opportunity for you to understand exactly the type of application that's being submitted and the type of work that is slated for next steps.
Thank you. Questions? I have a question.
Sure.
I read the report carefully because I remember the previous report. The previous report didn't suggest as much of our staff time or work as much as the current, where this seems to be headed. What I'm saying is this seems to be headed towards taking a lot more staff time than, or valuable staff time than what the original intention was. Can you comment on that? Because the context for me is that I absolutely don't disagree with the fundamental principle behind what this project is about. But again, this is one of those things that really is more in the provincial jurisdiction framework, in my view, than ours. And so it caused that question. It may not sound very specific, but it really comes down to, is this more downloading to us in a kind of a subtle and maybe not as big a way as others might be, but is this heading in a direction that really justifies the cost or the expense for the usefulness of it?
Through the chair, to the chair, I included the number of hours in the memo just so council was aware. I'd like you to understand, however, those hours are spread across multiple departments. So the interviews that are discussed in the memo were with transit operators, a couple members of the transit team, some of the employees of the rec complex, and other departments like planning staff as well participated. So it's not concentrated in one department area, but spread out across departments that would have those interactions with members of the public. I did have a really informative conversation with the community belonging team today, and something that was framed for me that I don't think I understood until today was one of the question that actually arose from those interviews was about how best the city could address engagement in terms of being more inclusive and accessible. And I think it's actually a really valuable asset that will come out of this. One of the things that we talk about a lot in planning is how best to engage our community and the different ways we need to engage the community. And in fact, this is a group that's now looking at people from our community that may inherently be challenged with the more typical engagement processes that we have, whether that be a public hearing, whether that be a room with boards and such. So I think there is an asset that is going to come from this that is actually going to drive some valuable processes for the city to rely on through next steps, whether it's the official community plan process or just engagement as a whole.
Thank you. That's that's reassuring to me. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you for this information and report. The way I see it kind of in a different way is it looks to be like a training initiative that we should be doing as part of our business anyhow. And there's some grants to help us along the way that we wouldn't get if we were doing it outside of this project. The interaction with our frontline staff with these vulnerable peoples can only be improved, and that improves the mental health of everybody in the community when we do this. I know I have talked to folks who are frontline staff and how ill-equipped they feel when they're running into situations that they know they could be handling differently, but haven't had the training and there hasn't been that conversation. And so I'm super happy to see this and believe it to be a worthwhile exercise that we probably should be doing with or without this project. So thank you.
If nothing else, thank you very much, Mr. Go.
Thank you.
On to 6.2, community engagement reports. Who would like to start that? Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of weeks since the last one, not too many activities. I did attend the tourism AGM meeting last week, and a couple new board members joining the team over at tourism. And they looks like they might get a new grant if the community forest grant goes through for some signage. One key vote, I guess, that was brought up at the tourism AGM. There was a vote passed in favor to change the name from Tourism Powell River to Tourism Cathet to match the reflectiveness, since most of their members, or not most, but members of the association come from all sides of the coast. So that is something that is in the process right now. And also had the chance to take part. The harm reduction team at the Kalama Nation did a walk with me experience last week, which gave it was an opportunity to just experience kind of living the life of some of those that have walked through substance abuse. And so it was a very eye-opening experience. Thank them for that opportunity and that learning experience.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, and basically it seemed like the week went by really quickly. And, you know, the highlight for me was the Walk With Me project that I participated along with Councillor Alameda and some others. The concept was you put on a set of headphones and you walk around the Tla'amin village along the beach and through the community and listen to personal experiences that people had with drugs and alcohol over their lifetime and the effect that had on their lives. It was very touching. I would encourage anybody who gets an opportunity to participate in that, because I think there will be more opportunities to do that in the future, to take advantage of that. We did that. It took, I think, about 2.5 hours. We had a circle before to discuss what was going to happen, then a longer circle after to discuss everybody's learnings and takeaways from it. So very worthwhile event, and I'm glad that the Tla'amin Nation put it on, and I was glad to be there.
Thank you. Councillor Palm.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to report on this time around, other than I want to thank the Chamber for the fine job they did of hosting the all candidates meeting that I attended. Ex-mayor Formosa did an outstanding job as the moderator for that event, and it was well attended. So kudos to the Chamber, and job well done for all. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So my report's a little bit longer just because I missed the last one due to traveling on the day of the committee of the whole and not managing to get into the room by phone. But so I did UBCM, and I did run for a director at large position, and I was unsuccessful there. Interestingly enough, the entire AVICC and all candidates were unsuccessful in that process. We on the coast were not. I guess what happened was there was a very strong voting bloc for the northern and interior areas. So they managed to vote in a block of folks within the UBCM that are representing the north and the interior very well. And folks out here on the coast were not voted in. So that's kind of what happened with politics on UBCM board at this year's UBCM. So tried hard, didn't manage to make that happen. While at UBCM, I did attend the C2C forum on the Monday. I managed to meet Jody Raybould, Wilson Raybould, while I was there, and it was something that I thought was wonderful. She's a wonderful woman, and the topic was reconciliation, and so she was a great speaker at that forum, and I really enjoyed that forum. Some of the highlights of UBCM from my perspective is our city met the Vancouver Coastal Health Board while we were at UBCM, and they were able to hear us out very well with our requests for paying some attention on recovery spots within our community, especially with the gap we have with women, and looking for ways to do that. And the meeting we had with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, we managed to update them and all the work we've been doing on reconciliation, and ask them to reconsider supporting our community and the actions that we are moving forward with on reconciliation and trying to have better conversations. And they did send us a letter since then. So that means we were successful at getting our message through, given that there is an election happening. There wasn't a ton they could say in that letter, but it gave me hope. Hopefully we can make an appeal soon after the government reconvenes and starts working again. I also did the Walk With Me, which Courtney, who's in our audience right now, mostly organized. It was amazing. I'm really happy I went. I'm going to come again. And I did the September 30th walk from the city down to Wellington Beach, and the Every Child Matters walk with the orange shirts and ceremonies. I really appreciated that. I attended the Western Forest Stillwater Community Advisory Committee meeting, and we did they gave us tons of information on the new Tla'amin resource management plan, and they went into some details around how monitoring is going to happen and how the different sections are structured, the conservation networks, the elk areas, community interface areas, watershed areas. They're all mapped out with various different indicators that are going to be tracked in each area, and explanations around what has to happen for decisions to be made in each of those areas. Western Forest Products reports that they think they're in good shape for working together with Tla'amin with that plan, and they worked well together in supporting the development of the plan, and they believe it will work well moving forward. I do have a ton of information if anyone's interested on what those indicators they're going to be tracking are and how they've organized that. It's quite a lot of information, and so if people want to talk to me about that, I'm perfectly willing to do that. Just give me a shout. We also got to meet the new certification. The PEFC is replacing the one that we used to use for certification. And they had their folks come out and chat with us, and we got to meet them, and so that was good. I've also, I think I'm just going to say that I did a lot of stuff, and I'm going to sign off on my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I also attended the Walk With Me walk, which was good to see that as a local product. It is very impactful. A lot of what's going on in our community it's shocking to a lot of people. This is an opportunity to hear people with experience talk about it. In my experience, it takes a long time to learn, to understand. I, whether good or bad, had quite a bit of that during my paramedic career, but I appreciate this being produced right here by local people. I also attended the Prowls, Powell River Orphan Wildlife Support, forget exactly what that acronym exactly stands for, but anyway, the animal and principally bird rescue organization that is housed in the founder and main workers, Marilee Pryor's house still. I attended their AGM, and then that led to some discussion of next steps, which we are actually down the road to some degree on, because we've had a number of discussions over a number of years. So they are getting back in gear again and are hopeful to re-engage consideration of perhaps using some city land for their operation, which would allow them to do more, but also might relieve some tensions in their neighborhood. I attended the Foundry anchor table initial meeting. There were represented over 13 or 14 of us. Councillor Isaacson will be the principal representative from council sitting at that table as an ex officio, essentially. I'm an alternate. She wasn't well, so she attended online. I attended in person. It was good to be there just to kind of get a baseline. That also is a large project that I think the budget for it is somewhere around $6 million, something like that, just to give you an idea of how big it is. It's a wide range, represents a wide range of services and services for young people, that age group that often gets missed because they're no longer kids and they're no longer necessary, or they're not quite yet necessarily landed or launched. Actually, the organization covers from age 12 right up to 24, but it's that latter teens to early 20s group that I've seen really have challenges and problems. So I'm delighted that this is coming. It's a lot of provincial money for operations, basically, but there'll be fundraising, I'm pretty sure, for the development of it. I'm not 100% sure about that, so maybe I shouldn't have said that. I also represented the mayor a couple of days ago at Evergreen ECU, and I was expecting to see Mr. Hemphill there for the celebration of their new bus. There was a photograph on their presentation from the community forest. It was largely healthcare auxiliary money that went into that. The bus is really quite beautiful. It's potentially, I think, a 16 or 18 passenger bus set up so that it can handle wheelchairs. It's got a lift at the back, but it's off the side. It's not in the back of the bus itself. It's larger than your average small bus. And the people there are pretty excited about having that because it'll allow some of these, should I say shut in, but people who basically don't have that much opportunity to get out, elderly, chances to get out into the community to events and just get out. So that was an honor to represent the mayor and represent us there. And that's my report. Thank you very much. So that leaves us with pretty much nothing else on the agenda except for questions. And before I open it up, I would like to ask Mr. Sion if Mr. Galinsky is on the phone, seeing as I forgot him till the very end last time. And I understand he is going to be attending virtually now while he's nursing a broken foot. Very sorry to say. And nobody else online at the moment? Thank you. And there's no other media in the house, so questions from the gallery. Please come forward, identify yourself, and ask away.
Good evening, Council Chair. I just had a few questions.
Your name, Carolyn?
Carolyn Jackson, Saskatchewan Avenue. I just had a few questions about the lift TUP. Just in regards to Julie Jenkins' letter to Council August 22nd or staff, and then comparing it to the TUP from staff. So in Julie's letter, she has informed the community that they have got more funding for staff. So I was just wondering how many more staff they have on duty during the day, evening, like from to, and if they don't have that staff level, are they having to close and only be open in the evenings? Is staff or council aware?
I don't think that's an answer that council has. I also don't know if LIFT has informed us about that. So it's probably a question that should go to LIFT, but I'm going to defer to staff if staff has any information for you.
Unfortunately, or through the chair to the speaker, unfortunately, I do not have the number of staff that were added. I think there was just a general expression that they were happy that they were add additional staff members, but there wasn't a clear, this is how many staff we have.
I just thought that might be important since it was a concern to the neighbors and the community.
I believe it's a requirement. It would be implicit in the other requirements that are consistent with the original top 5. If they don't have the staff, they won't be able to be doing that. And that, I think that's something that we'd be aware of.
Yeah, I think the main concern was the community had wanted the extra security. So I believe that's the funding issue, hence into staff. Another question was, Ms. Jenkins had also said that there was going to be hourly sweeps of the garbage and sharps to the neighbors. And then in the top, it just says scheduled. So I just thought that might be nice to show that their intention is to be hourly, just for the neighbors. Again, it was a concern previously.
If I'm not wrong, I believe the condition is that it needs to be done before 8 o'clock in the morning. That's what I read. Perhaps the director of planning can confirm that or not.
Through the chair to the chair, yes, you are correct. It was before 8 o'clock in the morning was the sweeps. I think the letter from Ms. Jenkins was just indicating that they were intending to do more. If the request is that council amend the TUP to include additional sweeps or be clear about the hourly sweeps, that is a condition that council could consider and include in a renewal application.
Another question was, in Ms. Jenkins' letter, she also stated that they were committed to being a good neighbor, and they were going to have strict policies on loitering and unattended belongings. Are we aware of what their policies are?
Through the chair to the speaker, there isn't, this isn't a city operated facility, so I think I don't have a lot of the details as it relates to how they operate. It is a renewal of an existing TUP, and that's the information that I have at this point. The letter that you have is the same letter that I have.
Just also wondering if the council, if we're aware yet, if they have fulfilled the permanent housing services manager position.
We're not aware. I just have to add as well that though council has influence and in some cases the ability to make decisions that can have substantial influence, like yes or no on something like this, as far as conditions, we really have pretty limited power in determining what those policies would be. Now, you're familiar with the long discussions that have gone on here before, and I think that it's safe to say that we are and will do whatever we can to make the operation of it as compatible to the neighborhood as possible, as we have before. So I don't think anything's changed as far as that goes. Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. Since there wasn't really any discussion when this came up on the agenda, I didn't say anything at the time. But that might be because other councillors might feel similarly. We had a heavy discussion on this last year when the emergency weather shelter TUP came up. I don't know if they're going to apply for that again or not. And we knew, and I remember talking about this last year, that this this existing TUP was going to come up for renewal. I personally, because it was a 3-month or 3.5-month renewal, it was less concerned about digging into the weeds because it was only 3.5 months. If it was a renewal for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, I think a lot of the matters that came up last year would be further in discussion. But we know that this facility in this current space will not be there at the end of March. And this was not the time of year that I was going to dig into a lot of matters. Not that they're less important, but in the winter season, the rainy season, and soon approaching the cold season, it just felt like this was a 3.5-month time period to help some people, and I hope that LIFT has improved some things, and we haven't heard much since the emergency weather shelter in the last 12 months, which hopefully is a good sign. Sometimes no news is good news. But that was my take on it, and I think partly why there wasn't much discussion of it when it came up on the agenda today.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So the answers we have are in the letter, and we don't have additional answers for you. Sorry about that. I think LIFT is trying to relocate the shelter. The shelter is much needed. The rationale I had was similar to Councillor Almeida's. I know that a new location needs to be found, and they're working hard to do that. Forcing them to move at the end of December or be ready to move right away rather than waiting to March didn't make a ton of sense to me. And so that was the rationale I was thinking when I voted to put this to council. The decision has still not been made. It's to be made at council. This is a recommendation of the committee to the council, and the council then addresses that at the council. So we're listening to the questions and the things that community wants to say to us as part of that process. And that's where we're at from my perspective.
Councillor Baum.
Mr. Chair, just for council's information and for information, I've been getting phone calls in regard to concerned business owners in the area wanting to know some of the answers that you're asking for. The lease stipulations, are they doing their sweeps? Do they have a level of security that's adequate? All of those questions that we dealt with previously. So a lot of them are disappointed that it's been extended for another winter, but that is the case. And because it's short term, I reluctantly put up my hand. But I just want to say that I'm also getting already phone calls from where the proposed site is supposed to go down the road. And there's a lot of business owners in that area that are talking about leaving town if that's the case. So I just want council to be aware, we have to take this next question, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to weigh in on security issues, stipulations of the lease, all of that for the safety of our citizens. And I'm sure we're going to have this same conversation again when the application comes forward for that new site. And that's where we'll be. So be prepared for more of the same. Thank you, Chair.
So just to follow up, the neighborhood is not against housing unhoused or having them shelter. Our concern is the neighborhood and the businesses asked Lyft for all of these things, and they've said that they would provide them, but we didn't update the top to say that we're going to hold you to what you've promised in your funding. So I just think topping up the top with their own wording would be helpful to show the businesses in the community that the council listened and the operator listened. Otherwise, it sort of feels like it doesn't matter. It's only 3.5 months, but it's 3.5 months of businesses and neighbors still having to deal with issues. But Lyft is saying they're going to do better.
Dr. Varma is my doctor, and his dad was mine too, my dentist. A renewal renews all the existing conditions, if I'm not wrong. So that means nothing that was in effect previously has been rescinded. It is those conditions. This is a renewal. The conditions are still in effect, everything that was negotiated and discussed.
I'm clear on that. We're just asking for their clarification.
I'm confident we'll be in communication with them.
And then my final question is, would Lyft be able to send out an updated sort of contact list? I'm not sure if they could do email or mail. In Vancouver, they do that. And I know it's on the city's site, but not everyone does email or is great on the computer.
Can I ask you to suggest that to them, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery?
Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Harrop, and I live in Wildwood. I do have a question, but first I just would like to thank the council for attending Walk With Me last week in Tla'amin and for speaking about it this evening at this meeting. And I would just like to encourage you to keep talking about it and encouraging people to attend. And I know there was a question around if it would be happening again. We do have another walk scheduled for October 29th, next Tuesday. And then we do have between 2 and 4 walks scheduled for November. And those will be open to community, to council, to organizations, anybody who would like to attend, and public invitations will be posted very shortly. I do have a question just around the renewal of the temporary use permit for the shelter. And I think we all know if that temporary use permit is not renewed, then we will not have a shelter location through the winter as of December 14th. through the coldest time of the year. And I think that not having a space to provide shelter for some of the most vulnerable people in our community would actually increase things like public safety and the safety of the folks who don't have a place to live. And my question is, what is the city doing to support finding a new location for the shelter after March 31st? And is that something that the city is supporting the current operator with finding?
To my knowledge, that is entirely up to the operator. And I don't know if any of the rest of us here have any other knowledge, but I wonder if Director Gao might have a comment.
Through the chair to the speaker, yes, there have been some preliminary conversations between LIFT and planning staff, my previous colleague, Ms. Ferguson, as well as my colleague down on the end, Kelly Cuthbertson. So there have been discussions. I do think that the city's not in a great position to have a plethora of great sites that would be suitable. And I think that while those conversations haven't ended, they didn't end with a site of any sort that would make sense at this point. But we're still open to maintaining those lines of communication, recognizing that following the 31st of March, there's going to be a challenge with providing shelter in our community.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to that. I'm wondering if the city is aware of their legal responsibilities to designate overnight sheltering space, outdoor overnight sheltering space, in lieu of having an actual shelter in the community. Campbell River City Council 2 weeks ago did designate 2 overnight sheltering locations within the city of Campbell River because it is a legal requirement by the province to do that. And to, I guess, to kind of minimize and mitigate like tent encampments. And so I'm just wondering if that is something that the city is prepared to do if our current shelter actually closes.
We are aware of that legislation. It hasn't, because we have had a shelter here, it hasn't, the implications of it haven't manifested and materialized here. I don't believe, staff may have had conversations with regard to those implications. I'm not sure whether staff has had those conversations. I think the expectation is that we at least see the dire need for shelter, which is tragic in itself, but it is a dire need in our community. So I don't know if staff would have anything to add to that, either Director Gao or...
Through the chair to the chair in this case, staff haven't spent a great deal of time looking at that. We do look for council's direction. Should this shelter renewal not be approved, obviously we're going to be in a position where we need to be thinking about that. Unfortunately, it's just one of the many priorities that we're struggling with right now, and we'll leave it at that. I do think we're looking for your direction on this particular file.
Thank you, Director Gao.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Courtney. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dowd.
If anybody wants to participate in the Walk With Me program at any of those times you mentioned, how would they end up getting on the list of lucky people to attend?
I will be putting public invitations out, and so I will ensure to email them to all of you. And if you would like to attend, you may. I will also be posting the invitation on social media publicly, but also if there are folks that would like to attend and would like more information, people can contact me directly. My email is Courtney, COURTNEY HARROP @tn-bc.ca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. Councillor Lyon.
Thank you. I think we all talked about attending Walk With Me, but we neglected to describe what it is. And so the group of people goes on a walk with headphones and they share a collection of stories by local folks from our region. Did you have like a better description than that might help people understand what Walk With Me is?
Yeah, we often describe it as an experiential learning journey. And so the project started in 2019 in the Comox Valley, and we have spent the last almost 2 years working with the Walk With Me team and our local community action team. And so we spent a period of about 7 months engaging with folks from our community with lived and living experience working frontline, as well as lived and living experience with substance use and the toxic drug crisis, the housing crisis. And so what we've done is gathered a collection of audio stories that we've broken down into, we've actually got so much content that we don't have one track to walk with. We actually have 3 tracks that are about 45 minutes in length. And the idea is to listen together and go for a walk, which really kind of, I don't know, it supports moving through listening to some things that can be very hard to listen to. And then we spend time together after the walk to talk about potential ideas and strategies on how we can move forward together in our community to addressing the toxic drug crisis. It's a very powerful experience, and we're just getting started. There have been a number of other projects that have kind of been scaffolded with the project in the Comox Valley. So they've also just recently hosted an art exhibition at the Comox Valley Art Gallery involving members who participate in a safe supply program in the Comox Valley. And there's a lot of ways to work with the stories and work with the project moving forward. So there's definitely more to come, but right now we're just gonna be rolling out a series of walks for the community, and of course for any interested organizations that might want to host a walk just for their staff groups. We've already had a few requests for a couple of different staff groups in our community to participate.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Sion, is there anybody online? Especially Mr. Galinsky? No? Ah. Mr. Whitaker.
Good evening, Committee of the Whole and Chair. I have a few questions.
Your name, please.
Roger Whitaker, citizen of Powell River. A few questions pertaining to the agenda items tonight. The first one is 6.1. And does that training program have anything to do with the supportive housing that's planned for Joyce Avenue?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Go.
Through the chair to the speaker, no, it has nothing to do with the supportive housing.
I cannot hear you, sir.
No, it does not.
Okay, so that eliminates a whole bunch of questions. Thank you. My second question has to do with item 5.2. And inside that report, I'm reading a paragraph that it's a little outside my ken, so I have to read verbatim here. And then my first question is, am I reading it properly? That says that Powell River Community Forest funds directed externally to nonprofit organizations, other than eligible city projects, cause a tax increase. And for 2024, that's 9%. Am I reading that properly?
I think you are, because I remember reading that. I wonder if...
I cannot hear you, sir.
Yes, I think you are reading it correctly, but I don't have it in front of me right now. Mr.
It's in your package on page 56 of 90?
I have it in the other format, so I don't have 56, but
Would you like to read
The
it?
answer to you is adequate. Mr. Youngman may have a more detailed answer for you.
I didn't ask a question yet, other than whether or not that's what it says.
Oh, okay.
Is that what it says? That because they gave these grants, there's a tax increase in 2024 of 9% for the average single-family dwelling? In bold print.
Somebody else can answer this question. I'm still looking for.
Yeah, through the chair, I can jump in. Yeah, so it says for 2024, what this is trying to do is portray the opportunity cost of the Powell River Community Forest grants going to not-for-profits. It's the
Hear that because it's doubling up on the speech there. Can you?
It's portraying the opportunity cost. So the city gets some money through a lot of money through the good work of the Powell River Community Forest, and the opportunity cost of giving it to non-for-profit organizations, as opposed to using it for city projects, results in an estimated $224 for 2024. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm kind of stunned when I read that paragraph, because that's like blaming Christmas on Santa Claus. I belong on a board for a nonprofit. They work hard for their grants and not their grants rather, but all the fundraising that they do, which is a global thing. And, you know, I don't see the hospital here complaining that we got a grant from Vancouver Coastal Health to help our agency, which helps with the health issue in the city, saying, by golly gee, you know, if you had left that alone, those people could come to our facility and then we would make the money from that. Although I know that's a hot topic in a couple of nonprofits in town who are trying to take over other agencies so that they can have it on their list. But aside from that, I find this to be a very offensive statement. I'd like to see, and this is a very serious question, I'd like to see a full report on that paragraph and why that exists. Because the community forest, which I've heard in this chamber already been told, you should just give that money to us and we'll parcel it out. Thank you very much. That was a couple of administrations ago. And I see that kind of taped in underneath the bottom of this, between the lines. And I find it very offensive that a group of people work really hard to, we saw the show, what they do, and really smart people giving their time voluntarily, and on it goes. Will this council ask for that paragraph to be fully fleshed out in spreadsheets and other documentation that not only show this comment to be the truth, but irrefutably the truth and not arguable based on opinion?
Just before I turn it over to Mr. Youngman, I just want to express that this isn't really that complicated, that it is hard to accept. It is a certain perspective. I absolutely wouldn't argue that it's hard to accept, but I also have to say that this council has received a lot of correspondence and a lot of interaction that relates to taxation and increasing taxation and affordability. Housing and other concerns are a concern, but affordability is one of the principal concerns. In the interests of that, we need to look in every possible way at every opportunity that we have here now. And some of them may be rankly painful compared to the assumptions that we have held up until now. All of those assumptions need to be examined. That is my view. Some of my colleagues may have other views, but I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Youngman at this point.
Thank you. Through the chair, the financial implications here is not trying to take away from the great work that the non-for-profits are doing. That is valuable work. What it's trying to convey is a cost. And sometimes, you might not like the cost, but opportunity cost is a cost. And if you want to make good decisions, you need good information. And I think that it's an important cost to consider.
Well, rather than getting into a discussion about one thing or the other, and with respect to the chair, I believe your answer to me conflates a whole bunch of different issues together, which have nothing to do with each other. This is purely and cleanly a taxation issue, and you've got one group providing funds for nonprofits, and another group, the city and the staff, saying that that donation is causing a tax increase. I see this as a blaming thing, and I find it really difficult to swallow this paragraph. And that's why I'm asking for this council not to say it's wonderful, but to ask for a full report on how this could even be opportunity costs. Let's talk about that since you brought it up. We have a fire department, and we have a police department. They sit there and wait for an opportunity to go and do something. A fire happens, they arrive, they put it out, and they put all their equipment back, go home, they wash their gear, replenish the supplies in the truck, and then they wait for the next opportunity to make a call. Does that mean that that cost us something? If they sit idly, it's the same cost or not? They let the house or the other asset burn to the ground? This paragraph does not make sense to me at all. And I think there's a lot of people in this community that would look at that and say, are you kidding me? Two people said it to me tonight already.
Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Councillor Elliott and then Councillor Almeida. I think they have something to say as well.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. So it isn't that taxation is going up because we gave out a grant. The opportunity cost really only has meaning when it has definition to what the other opportunity is. So you recall me asking the question of, so what is it that's on our capital plan in the next 5 years that is eligible for community forest dollars that we are going to be using tax dollars to spend instead? So without that information, it's very difficult to answer the question that you're saying. So what gives meaning to the opportunity cost is the list of items that are the opportunity for that money. So should I spend $10, on a very basic level? Should I spend $10 to contribute to a fund that allows all the kids to go to the movies, or should I give this $10 to something that's going to lower my cost over here on my home? The opportunity cost of providing that grant is that we can't spend it on something that we have to pay taxpayers' dollars on. That was all they were trying to explain in this case. So without the list of what the eligible projects would be that we could include in the community forests envelope, it's difficult for us to assess where that's exactly at. So I take your point, and I've asked similar questions, and both the Community Forest Board and our finance staff are going to get together and discuss that a little bit. I think they've had some discussions, but we haven't received a list of things that are on that project list that we have to pay for that would be eligible for community forest funds. I asked it last spring, I asked it again today. I'm really hoping we get a list of those so that we aren't guessing. So opportunity cost and how you express things is just the alternatives for the same money. If you spend it here or if you spend it there. That was what they were trying to convey in this message. And so I know that it doesn't make sense to folks in a direct kind of way, but the comparison was, should we spend it here or should we spend it there? And it's the same dollars, you can only spend it once.
Well, summarize my question again, that like a full report, so that does make sense in a written format, because opportunity cost is like saying, I hope to make $10 million next year. Well, I only made $500,000. I'm short $9.5 million. I'll put that on my taxes and say I didn't make $9.5 million. I'll take that as a loss. That's what that paragraph says to me.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm confused by Mr. Whitaker's last example because I don't think they relate. I think what it boils down to is there are some communities there's several communities that have community forests and they all set them up a little differently. The community forest is a company that is owned and managed by the city or is owned by the city. It's delegated to a community forest board. And that is standard across the province. Other communities that have community forests have certain percentages of funds that are dedicated to however they wish to dedicate it to. In the past, it's been that all or most of the funds in the community forest have been dedicated to nonprofits and recreational projects. And that's been the situation. But in the past, we also had a mill that paid taxes. We also had many things going in the right direction for us. We don't have those right now. So as Councillor Elliott has shared, this was just information that was put in there. Maybe the wording could have been a little differently to provide less confusion. It hasn't increased taxes, but we could have said no to any of the grants and put that money into lowering taxes another way. Council didn't do that, but that was always an option to be done if council wanted to do that.
So just on that, I've been in this chamber now since 1998 off and on, but since 2000 has just about every single meeting. And I was here when the community forest was chartered. And I also know that there are a model. And many times I've heard in this chamber from the various administrations that have been in council here that other communities wish they had one as well designed as ours. They see this community forest as a model, not a tax. So anyway, thank you.
Councillor Baum, did you wish to add something? And I think we should move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to make a couple of quick comments here. And, I've already expressed how I feel, and I'm still sick to my stomach over the wording that I see in that report today. Opportunity cost has never been brought up for 16 years. I feel it very offensive and disrespectful to the community forest. For a fine group that's done so much fine work to rebuild this community as to when I was first elected and there was boarded up buildings and churches and business going out of business all over the place. They were the saving grace for the city of Powell River. Let's not ever lose sight of that, ever. And to say it's tied to taxation in terms of their current bylaw is totally false. And I'll say that again. It's totally false according to the current bylaw that our community forest and the city works under. Let's be clear. So that's why I'm so upset. And to say that this is 9% taken or increase in taxation or 224, no way. No way. And that is a false report. That's why I'm upset. So I can't be any clearer than that. And all the fine work that our board has done, as you have seen, should be applauded to the highest mountaintop that we have. And the community, when you come to try to change this bylaw, the community is going to fill in and overflow this chamber when you're taking monies away from nonprofits that have rebuilt this community. I'll say that loud and clear. Be prepared if you think you're going to go down that road, because I have a feeling that's where you're going. So for what it is, we'll live for another day, Mr.
Whitaker.
Mr.
You know who you are.
I do. Yes, sir. Very much so.
Yeah. Where are you on this?
I wanted to be. Yeah.
Councillor Dowd.
Oh, this is a comment. There's a comment in this report. However unclear it may be to many people. And all it does is it addresses the fact is that there is dollars that come from the community forest. And we just passed a motion this evening to submit those dollars to various nonprofits, which I think are great nonprofits and which are great things to put the community forest money into. And the finance department is telling us that if they were being paid for out of taxes, this is how much it would cost. Now, can I finish? You've had some time to clarify your questions and re-ask them and add some, so I'd like to answer your question. Okay? So the opportunity to dig into the truth and the details of the finances is not looking at the 2024 taxes, which have all been assessed. They've been decided on by City Council, and they've been paid by almost 100% of the people in the community. The thing I would suggest that we all do is pay attention to the 2025 budget and 5-year plan, which Council will be dealing with pretty soon, when we'll be looking at forecasts of the revenue the city can actually hope to receive and forecasts of expenditures for things like pickleball assembly buildings and things like that. And pay attention to how much we are expected to get in revenue and how much we expect to spend. Rather than arguing about the semantics of one paragraph, I don't think we need a special report for that. I think you can get all the answers you need in the city's financial statements, 5-year plans, and our upcoming conversations about what we will do with taxes.
With all due respect, sir, it says spring grants to NPOs increased property taxes for the average single-family dwelling by $180, 7%. The cost to an AFSD on the proposed grants will be $44 at 2% for a 2024 total of $224 at 9% increased property taxes for an average single-family dwelling in bold print. Fall grants proposed in Appendix A with a total 2024 PRCF funding for projects would be $3.8 million, with $2.1 million or 55% to NPOs and $1.7 million or 45% to the city. The wording is very clear. It's increased property taxes. And that should read, as Councillor Palm put it, save this town by beautifying things like the curling hall, which is hiding with my name somewhere in Councillor Palm's mouth, but the curling hall and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of things, including now they're being asked to put up shelters for the bus stations, and BC Transit saying, well, I don't know if we can really get into that because, so it's just a big monster. This paragraph is offensive and created a monster where none existed. We had a friendly handout to hard work of people, and this is turning that into a slap in the face. And I again ask this council to challenge themselves to request from staff a full report showing this in proper numbers, not opportunity costs, but in real honest to God numbers. So I guess that's enough from me. I'll just write a letter to the editor. They seem to have a little bit of effect. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Any other questions from the gallery? Any calls? Mr. Sion? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Councillor Almeida? Second, Councillor Palm. All in favor? Unanimous. Meeting is adjourned.